We're not going to beat AWS on their units of economics, but if we create a new way of running compute that is significantly more efficient, that does become a game that makes sense to play.
I'm joined today by Rita, who is the VP of Developers and AI at Cloudflare.
We do have leaders at the company who are students of Clay Christensen. The idea of disruption, I think, very much is in the core DNA of the company. We really try to hire people that have all of these traits. We built a developer platform and we use it to ship.
You just launched containers, which
We
is
did.
pretty big. Does it feel like that's like is it like joined up now? Because it feels like that was like the kind of, at least like one of the crowning pieces that was always like, now it feels like you can kind of do everything on Cloudflare with containers.
In a way, yes. I know that that's something that users have wanted us to release for a very long time. I would say, it's an interesting one in that we've been having the debate internally of whether or not that's a product we release to our customers for quite a few years now, actually. In some ways, we've had the product built out and we've been running it in production for quite some time now as well. And so it's really been a question of, do we put it directly into customers' hands, or is it something that we expose through, if you use Workers builds, you've used our container platform. If you've used browser isolation, you've used our container platform. And ultimately where we landed was, there's always going to be a long tail of packages, libraries, things that people need to run somewhere. We have a bunch of these internally too. Again, we have use cases like workers builds that we ultimately needed containers in order to be able to run. And we do dog food for that reason. And so if we find ourselves in a situation of we need something, we generally think of, how do we expose this to customers because they probably need it too. So it does feel like a piece of the puzzle that kind of completes the platform in a way. But I think what you've been able to do on the platform, even without it for such a long time, has, I'm both very excited about it, and I also don't want to overstate its importance just because there is so much hype. And this is not to say that I'm not excited about it. I'm very excited about it, but it's a balance.
Yeah, you had to kind of do it the Cloudflare way in the sense with the workers, whereas like this is like you can just do it however you want.
Yeah, that is very much how we thought about it. So to give you some context on why we went back and forth on, whether we released this to users over the years too. The reason we even entered the developer platform space, the cloud space, the compute space is really started with the release of Workers. And Workers came out of a constraint that we had where, the amazing thing about constraints is constraints breed innovation.
Yeah.
And we really had to allow developers to program the CDN. And if you're going to program something like a CDN where the value of it comes from it being really fast, it means that it has to be really fast and really efficient, right? You can't spin up a container that's going to have a 10-second cold start on every single request. That's nonsensical. And when we stumbled across Workers, which was obviously intended for one purpose, but we realized it was super powerful. The reason we were then like, oh, actually, it makes sense to build an entire developer platform is because it was a disruptive technology that allowed us to provide compute in a way that was orders of magnitude more efficient. We entered it from this way. If we'd entered it from the other way, so let's say we woke up one day and said, we want to compete with the giants, right, that have been around for over decades now and have specialized in running centralized data centers and running really, really massive data centers that are designed to run many, many VMs. We're not going to beat AWS or GCP or the other providers on, their units of economics. That doesn't make sense for us. But if we create a new way of running compute that is significantly more efficient, all of a sudden that does become a game that makes sense to play.
Yeah. So you
You
had to
see?
have like a software advantage, not just like, because you couldn't have like a hardware advantage in the sense of like having as many data centers and like the scale of it that they have.
Exactly. That's such an important part of why I do this. And disruptive technologies do disrupt over the long term because they are more efficient. They open up more doors. They make accessible a technology that would otherwise be cost prohibitive in many ways to customers, right? And the way that we see this show up is not just in terms of raw cost, but also the thing that was so interesting to us was the ability to deliver on the serverless promise to developers, or actually really the cloud promise to developers of not having to worry about servers or infrastructure. The problem with VMs and containers is that ultimately, no matter how much you try to abstract them away, it's a leaky abstraction. As a developer, if you're trying to scale them up, you have to worry about regions, you have to worry about concurrency, you have to worry about cold starts. We know of many customers who, maybe they're using a serverless function, but they have a whole Rube Goldberg machine that's set up around keeping it warm, right? With workers, we're able to provide something where you actually didn't have to do any of that at all. And I think that opens things up to so many more developers. And it's interesting now having the developer platform in this kind of cross section with where we are with AI too. So I feel like we opened up the door to so many more developers on the infrastructure side, and then AI is opening up the door to so many more developers on just the like writing code side, that I think the two together will be really, really magical. But yeah, to go back to workers versus containers, that's the origin story of where we started. And yeah, I feel like now that we've proven that you can actually build a whole developer platform on top of workers and on top of isolates, containers was just the piece that we could slot into that completes the picture.
Scaling DevTools is sponsored by WorkOS. If things start going well, some of your customers are going to start asking for enterprise features. Things like audit trails, SSO, skim provisioning, role-based access control. These things are hard to build, and you could get stuck spending all your time doing that instead of actually making a great dev tool. That's why WorkOS exists. They help you with all of those enterprise features, and they're trusted by OpenAI, Vercel, and Perplexity. And if you use them for user management, you get your first million monthly active users for free. I honestly don't know any dev tools that have 1 million monthly active users, apart from GitHub maybe. So that'll get you pretty far. Here's what Kyle from Depot has to say about WorkOS.
We use WorkOS to effectively add all of the SSO and skim to Depot. It's single-handedly like one of the best developer experiences I've ever seen for what is like a super painful problem if you were to go and try to roll that yourself. So for us, we can effectively offer SSO and skim, and it's like 2 clicks of a button, and we don't ever have to think about it. It's like one of the best features that we can add to Depot. It's super affordable, which effectively allows us to like break the SSO tax joke and essentially say like you can have SSO and skim as like an add-on onto your monthly plan. Like it's no problem. So it really allows smaller startups to essentially offer like that enterprise feature without a huge engineering investment behind it. Like it's literally, we can just use a tool behind the scenes and our life is exponentially easier.
Like, how are you able to kind of like think about this? Like, because I feel like most people don't have this like strategy that Cloudflare have. And I know that like Swix has written about this really good article about like how you're playing Go, how you're like surrounding the big players. And then I think Stratechery have also written about Cloudflare and how disruptive it is, and like how I think he was like referencing Clayton Christensen and, you know, all this sort of stuff. How does it like actually manifest behind the scenes, this kind of like strategic thinking?
I mean, we do have leaders at the company who are literally students of Clay Christensen's, including our founders, Matthew and Michelle, and James Allworth, who's our head of innovation and actually co-wrote one of his books with him. So the idea of disruption, I think, very much is in the core DNA of the company and permeates it throughout. And if you think back to even some of the original products, we always looked at it from the lens of disruption and taking services that were previously only available to enterprises, making them commoditized and available to everyone, and disrupting things from that standpoint. In terms of, how the mechanics of it work in the day to day, I think we are generally a very long term focused company, and in everything that we do, we try to ask ourselves what's our competitive advantage, what's the unique thing that we can bring to the table, especially when it comes to our developer platform. And so that's where a lot of these decisions come from. It's like, again, we don't want to generally uh some of our products do come from, if you think about all of the pieces that a developer needs in order to build an application, obviously we want to provide as many of the primitives as possible. But at the same time, whenever we do bring a new product to market, we do try to think about how do we build it in a way that that allows us to compete over the long term, not just over the short term.
I guess that's kind of coming back to containers, was like, maybe that was why you were delaying, was like, what's our competitive advantage here? Whereas like with workers, it was clear where the competitive advantage was.
Exactly. And since I joined the company, the three key values, and sorry, I'm thinking because I don't want to get this wrong. But the three values, honestly, sometimes when companies talk about values, I roll my eyes a little bit. You do feel it so much when you interact with people here, and it's curiosity, it's transparency, and then the third one is around oh my god, I'm like blanking on the word itself, but not the principle.
Yeah.
Principle.
Oh, nice.
I was not intending to make that joke. Um, but I think this applies when it comes to, if you look at, no one likes to have an outage. Obviously, those are not the fun moments for us. But if you look at, our responses over the years when we have had incidents, we try to respond to them as quickly and as transparently as possible. And that's something that we're very, very principled and disciplined around. Similar thing with, uh, ultimately, I think, again, it's very much in the DNA of the company to be in the business of trust. Even if you think about just sending traffic through us and letting us decrypt it in order to, provide WAF mitigation, in order for someone to put that trust into us, that means that we're not going to take certain actions that maybe someone else would see as profitable in the short term, but in the long term, that doesn't allow us to grow a sustainable business.
Yeah, that does fit with what I've kind of seen. And I was just speaking to a startup today that are pretty much building on top of Cloudflare as an explicit thing where like they're just trusting you guys to just handle all the infra stuff and they're not going to worry about it. So that does make a lot of sense that you've been doing that. And I guess it's stuff like R2 fees, and people sometimes like, how are you making money off this? And like a lot of the DNS stuff, it's like, I don't think I've paid money for that.
Having a free tier. Some people ask, why do you guys do this? How are you going to do it? Is it going to go away? It will never go away.
That's awesome. Okay. And then, so kind of, well, segueing, you have a very active Twitter kind of team. And so, and
We are
I've met
chronically online.
it's like, well, it feels like everyone, especially in London, like all the people that I'm like, I saw like Kat's just joined, right? Kate's just joined. And so like I feel like there's like everyone's in the team now. It's like in London, it's like Sunil, and you essentially have a lot of very talented people, and they're very, as you said, online. It's almost like DevRels, but these are the people that are actually building the products.
I think we just try to hire people that really deeply care about what they do, and that comes with, you know, if you really care about what you're doing, you care about what people are saying about it. First of all, so you're always monitoring for, is my all of our PMs are, and it's not just Twitter. We have a developer Discord as well. It's a great source of feedback. So we try to, first of all, monitor things for feedback and be really responsive to people. But similarly, I view, I was talking about curiosity being one of the values, right? And I think similarly, as much as I wish I was less online than I am, especially right now with AI and with things moving so quickly, where every day there's a new model being released, there's a new product being released. You kind of have to keep your finger on the pulse and understand what's in the zeitgeist in order to build a relevant product and make sure that you are keeping up with what's top of mind for developers. So it's not that we hire for that in particular, but I think it's not entirely a coincidence either.
Yeah.
We also have a lot of great people. It takes a village to build these products, and there are a lot of amazing people that are not on Twitter and still do incredible work.
Yeah. I'm very sure of that. Yeah. It feels like there's been, from the outside, and I've seen people write this, it's like Cloudflare are like just shipping like crazy these days. It feels like you're going faster. Like it's not, which is usually, I feel like it's the opposite. It's like you kind of get bigger, and people. I feel like people don't. I didn't maybe even realize it's like the market cap today of Cloudflare is like 60 billion or something. It's like, this is a big company. This is not like a startup, but you're still pumping out a lot of stuff. How do you think you've been able to do that?
We're just churning out AI slop. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
So ChatGPT.
Well, no. I think our number one secret weapon is we built a developer platform and we use it to ship. I mean, that is my promise to developers. That's the thing that we go up and talk about, is when people ask, why should I use Cloudflare over insert hyperscaler here? The answer is, we allow you to move faster, and that's the way that we've enabled ourselves to move faster, is we built the developer platform that we needed in order to do that. So that's certainly a big piece of it. The second half of it is, I think, again, there's very much a culture of that encourages moving quickly, and there's this idea that I think when you're a startup you have, and as you grow up you kind of lose it, because the expectations grow, where if you're not a little embarrassed by what you're shipping, you've waited too long. And this is a lesson that we've learned over and over, where actually the faster you put something into customers' hands, actually the better product you'll build and the faster you'll be able to go in some ways, because nothing ends up being as motivating as receiving a constant stream of feedback from customers that are telling you like, oh, I wish I had this feature. Oh, I wish this was faster. It makes you realize how much, what a big backlog you need to get to, but also it's very motivating to then put the next thing in customers' hands and see how excited people are, see what they build on it. And that gets you to, go build the next thing from there. I think where a lot of teams get stuck is, I think it's easy to get stuck in the early ideation phase of, what does this thing look like that I'm supposed to build, or how should I build it? And we very much, to that extent, encourage prototyping and MVPs, and we do weekly demos where it's like, let's just put something out there, get a feel for it, and iterate on it week over week. And then, I think the other place that people get stuck is in trying to perfect things, and you're never going to get something perfect. I think actually the risk of the longer you withhold something to put it into customers' hands, the risk of getting something wrong actually kind of goes up.
Getting it out there fast makes total sense. And especially if it's like in the SaaS context. But I feel like it's way harder when you're like this is an infrastructure product. Like if you launch something new, it's like people are like relying on it. It's like, how have you managed to like kind of keep that like mindset while knowing it's like, but it can't like break, or it can't like,
So for that, we have different guidelines for different products and their levels of maturity, right? So the workers runtime, for example, we've had to first of all think very deeply and come up with instrumentation that would allow us to ship faster. There was a point where we were kind of stuck in being able to release changes or change APIs, and we realized what we needed was a feature flagging system in order to allow users to opt in, because because breaking changes would be, we would just break entire websites that are on the web, which is unacceptable. And so we ended up building a feature flagging system. And even with that, something like the workers runtime, we're going to be a lot more conservative about releasing it. And again, this is where we build things into our platform to also allow us to, we will allow releases to we'll roll them out to Canary first to a certain percentage of users and allow them to bake for a little bit and see, over the small percentage of traffic, are we seeing any changes, and roll them out much more gradually. Any products that are built on Workers has this gradual rollouts concept. So a lot of our teams release in this way too. And so you kind of have to use your judgment of how conservative versus, a product that when it comes to releasing a new product, if it has 0 users today, you can go really, really fast, right?
Yeah.
And so I think having that level of granularity and judgment is actually really important, because sometimes people take things very dogmatically, like, oh, well, this is how we release things. And it's like, no, I actually don't need you to bake something in Canary for 48 hours. If it has 0 users, you will learn nothing.
Yeah. So it's like you're not using the same process for like something someone shipped at the weekend and
Exactly. So something's going to have a different life cycle if it's still pre-customer. Similarly, this is why we have, alphas and betas, where we like to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room in terms of, we might still change certain APIs, even though honestly, normally once we put things into customers' hands, we assume that we won't be able to change things very drastically, because no matter how many times you say something is a beta, someone out there is relying on it and is never going to update their code.
Yeah, this is true. I know this Sunil's working on the agent stuff. Is that like kind of how you're seeing like the future of things? Is everything's, I mean, probably wouldn't be a very contrarian take to say like it's going to be agents, and like Cloudflare is going to be the best place to run agents. Is that kind of the plan?
That's kind of the plan. I wish I had my agents hat that we made, but yeah, I think we kind of inadvertently built the best platform for building agents, and I really truly do believe that the more we're seeing agents being built, both in terms of just the primitives that you need in order to build an agent, from voice operated agents, which we have our real time products for, all the way to chat powered agents. And agents do have such distinct usage patterns in terms of their dependency on long running LLMs to execute, and their needs, patterns like human in the loop that require you actually the flexibility in the pricing model, really, in order for, agents to even be feasible, for you to be able to run hundreds, thousands, millions of agents in parallel. Paying for all of that idle time becomes unfeasible really, really quickly. And so, I'm very bullish on, first of all, just agents in general, and especially on developers building them on Cloudflare.
Very cool. Very cool. So something I wanted to ask you as well is about like the feedback mechanisms that you have, because it seems like you're quite responsive. Especially, I mean, I think you're responsive anyway compared to like the other companies that are on Twitter and stuff. But I mean, I guess you're like halfway between like the startups and the hyperscalers or something. But I think you're definitely acting a lot more like the startups and like feedback. So I wanted to ask how do you actually like get what people say back into the sausage?
You know, first of all, in terms of the gradient between the hyperscalers and the startups, if you compare, the number of people that work at, say, AWS, like Cloudflare we're 5,000 people. It's big. It's much bigger than a startup, but it's not.
How many do you think AWS have actually? I don't even have a gauge on that.
I think it's in the order of magnitude of tens of thousands.
Okay. Yeah. So
It's
at least
still
10x bigger.
Yeah, big difference. I think, I think the cool thing actually about working on a developer product is the extent to which you're able to be connected to your customers. And so we encourage, I don't have to receive the feedback directly and then funnel it all the way to, a PM to an engineer. A lot of our PMs and engineers are able to seek out this feedback themselves. And so it's not this long chain of, getting that feedback back to someone. Again, that's something that we just very much encourage, and not because, it's public, but because the feedback ends up being really valuable, both in terms of long-term feedback of things that people are, if I see several times that people have the same question, are struggling with the same thing, it's very telling of, we should update the docs, or we should update the product or the onboarding, because obviously this thing is not very clear. Sometimes it's also a very good signal for, if I see that someone complained that I don't know, that they're unable to update their worker subscription more than 5 times in the past hour. Oh, like that might actually be an incident. So I think staying connected to customers in that way, I don't see that being something that we lose as we grow.
It seems like it's like team is basically the key ingredient, because I guess you couldn't do that if people were if you weren't hiring really good people that could kind of do a bit of everything, talk to customers, cared about the problem. And
Exactly. And part of it is PM's job too. I think that is something that's harder to expect out of every engineer, but for the PMs at least, which are literally, the job of a PM is to be the voice of the customer and to bring the voice of the customer into engineering conversations. The customer could be in customer meetings. The customer could be at conferences. The customer could be on Discord. The customer could be on Twitter. And so it's ultimately your job to seek out, those sources of feedback.
how are like the PMs, like what does like the teams typically look like, the structure?
It depends a little bit. Often, actually, it's funny. There was some discourse on Twitter today about what's the right number of PMs to,
Really?
products or teams. We generally have a single PM per product, although I'll asterisk that with the fact that Workers is tricky because Workers is a really big product and it has so many components. There's the runtime, there's the observability aspect of it, there's the CI/CD aspect of it, it's also the longest running product, and the longer you have something around, the more you realize how many features you've launched over the years, and they all need maintenance and updates at some point. So Workers has several PMs that are responsible for different areas, but generally, yeah, we have a product manager that's at least one-to-one aligned with their engineering team and with their engineering manager, and in certain two things that sometimes will happen. One is there are some products that are going to be, at least initially or sometimes for a long time, they're going to have smaller scope. And so it's not uncommon for a PM to oversee more than a single product directly. Or when we go to spin up something new, again, we'll take a PM and we'll even often take, a couple engineers from other teams. We try to have a really, really small kind of tiger team when we do try to spin up a new product, because in order to move fast, you actually, if you add too many people early on, that will slow you down as well. And so we try to create this kind of small unit, allow them to run really fast, and if it ends up being successful, if it's growing, then either that PM becomes full-time on that product and we hire someone for their old role, or vice versa, they stay on their product, and it's good signal for us that, hey, we need to hire a PM for this role now.
So you just, keeping it really small, ideally,
Yeah,
for as long
exactly.
as possible. And so, for example, with agents, the
Mhm.
product that Sunil is building, actually, maybe for people that haven't come across, could you also share what that is? And then it'd be great to hear about how that journeys looked and team and stuff like that.
That one's a unique one. So we have a product called Agents SDK. It's basically a library you can install. If you npm I agents, you can start running it immediately, and it provides you with a lot of really useful tools for and patterns for building agents. So if you want to have an agent's UI, it comes with a really slick UI. It'll help you manage memory. So if you're building an agent, you want to have a long running conversation where it remembers the context, and it'll store, under the hood, it's no surprise, a lot of durable objects. So it'll store all of that in durable object, which turns out to be a very good model for creating agents. But it abstracts a lot of that for you. And if you're building MCP servers, we have a lot of libraries and helpers for that as well. That one was interesting. That one came out of us starting to see a lot of people building agents and kind of thinking, what should we do in this space? And this is always an interesting discussion. Like, okay, we want to do something. What is the product? Is it that you go into the dashboard and drag and drop your way through an agent, or kind of CRUD UI through it? Is it a library? What is it? And in this instance, because it's something that we see developers kind of going through, and we'd seen a few frameworks also for building agents, but they seemed a bit heavy-handed for us, and so we wanted to provide something that was pretty lightweight and would just allow people to get up and running on our platform quickly. And I think it was over a weekend that myself, Sunil, Matt Silverlock, a few others just kind of sat down and started with the docs.
No way.
Okay, what would the docs look like for something like this? And Sunil wrote out the library and we launched it. And as
That's
I was saying
crazy.
before, started to get feedback and realized, okay, this is what people are asking for.
Wait, you guys did this at the weekend as well?
That's how it started. Yeah.
That's what, how did that come about? Like,
Once the mind hive starts going, it's like, okay, let's do this now. Um,
so
I,
cool.
I think, I mean, it took longer than a weekend to be very clear. But we set a deadline of like, okay, it, let's imagine today is, I don't know, February 10th. What if we launch this on March 1st?
Mm,
And, this is the plan. Here's everything that we need. Um, who owns what?
wow, that's very cool. That's a good sign. Kind of going back to the hiring, that is like also like the acquiring as well. This seems like you're acquiring a lot of companies with very good people. I know there's like Boris and Sunil in London, of course. But I know there's a lot more. It seems like a very good strategy from the outside.
People are the lifeblood of the company. People are the most important thing. When I've been in Cloudflare for 9 years, and when people ask me in interviews, and it sounds so cheesy every time, they're like, "Why are you, why have you been around for so long?" I'm like, I really like to come into work every day and see these faces. I have literally met some of my closest friends here. So I think in terms of hiring, it's something that we care about a lot, and recruiting goes all the way to, Dane does a ton of recruiting still, who's our CTO. So does Matthew, our founder and CEO. Hiring is something that's taken very seriously. And yeah, again, we really try to hire people that are curious and humble and empathetic and have all of these traits. Uh, in terms of acquiring, I think there's something very interesting and unique about, we were talking about how startups tend to move really fast, and um, there a lot of the way that we operate is kind of similar to how we would operate a startup, especially when it comes to launching new things. And so startups happen to be a really good source of that mindset and of that DNA of, okay, let me optimize for getting something done. And I have finding people that have a really strong vision, and a vision that's strong enough to help them, tear through whatever red tape and help them not get stuck and help them carry things over the line. And so, these small acquisitions have been, a really, really big success for us.
And I guess especially if they're already building like with Cloudflare, it seems like both of those examples, they were like very, very in the Cloudflare ecosystem. I know Sunil had already worked. It was like a boomerang.
Sunil is a boomerang. But yeah, I mean, that's the other thing too, is the folly of so many acquisitions is the integration piece. And the reason that integration is hard is often, technologies between companies are not compatible. And if someone wasn't built on Cloudflare, trying to get them into Cloudflare would be really, really challenging. And so yeah, the more companies build on Cloudflare, the easier it is.
So perhaps someone could just like see where there's a gap in Cloudflare, build their own startup, so that adds it to Cloudflare, and then slide into your DMs.
100%. If you're trying to do this, the recipe for success, please do it. I mean, the other thing too is, what we find is if you're building on Cloudflare, you will have a lot of feedback for us, and so we want people that like some of these conversations start out of people continuously tweeting at us and being like, "I found this bug. I found that bug. I found another bug." And I'm like, "Okay, you want to come fix them?"
I think it was Sunil saying that was like how he joined or something. Was that,
Yeah,
am I misremembering? Yeah.
that was part of it.
um, very, very cool. Very cool. Okay, I think we're coming towards the end, but I wanted to ask if there's anything that, if you had to kind of put your finger on something that Cloudflare does that's quite unusual that you don't see many other startups doing that maybe they should do, is there anything that kind of comes to mind?
I know that the answer is yes, because when people join, things don't make sense to them immediately. I mean, one thing maybe that's actually become commonplace, but didn't used to be commonplace, is innovation weeks. We've been doing birthday week for many, many years. We noticed that there were things that were sitting at that 90% completion point, and it was a good forcing function to, go, hey, okay, time to launch these things. And that was one half of it. The half of it that I just mentioned came later. The bigger part of it was that I think is also perhaps quite unusual about Cloudflare is the obsession with a mission and how mission centered we are. And yeah, always shipping things for birthday week that were contributing towards the betterment of the internet. So one of the first things that we launched as a part of birthday week was free SSL for everyone, which wasn't at all at the time. No one was doing that. It wasn't at all commonplace. And I think in general, yeah, this idea of taking things that were only previously accessible to large enterprises and commoditizing them over and over again. And even if sometimes that might externally look like, oh, aren't you going to, cannibalize a part of your business because people aren't going to upgrade to get a certificate if it's better for the internet, I think it works out to be better for us for the long term as well. So I think I just named a couple of different things, but yeah, the innovation weeks go way back, and it's funny to see that now a lot of startups do launch weeks. But we'd been doing them for a long time, and I guess the part of it that comes across as unusual to people sometimes is they can be quite chaotic. Things come together. Things are both planned for a long time and also come together at the very last minute. And yeah,
Amazing. Rita, thank you so much for joining. That was so fun. And I wanted to interview you for ages, so really happy that you've had the time to come on.
the pleasure was all mine. It was so much fun talking to you, Jack.
Thanks. And thanks everyone for listening.